I had no peace and I felt very trapped. My greatest problem was with the incredible evil perpetuated within the cult. The brutal discipline and above all human sacrifice. Chapter 7. Discipline within the Brotherhood. Elaine talks. Sex for the others in the cult was free and easy and just about all the time. Also sex with children. A very high percentage of all children within the cult are regularly sexually molested from a very young age. The cult members mostly pair off with others of the same power level. Almost every ceremony or meeting ends with a sex orgy. Individual members usually have the right to participate in sex if they want to. There was sexual intercourse with demons also. Demons that could be seen and heard and felt in a physical manifestation. This would occur usually at meetings and Sabbaths where a lot of drugs were used. Demons also had sex with unwilling people. People who were being punished for not doing what Satan or the demons wanted done. Often a man was forced to watch while more than one demon had brutal sexual intercourse with his wife. That was a very effective way of discipline. Fear is a tactic that is used more often than anything else. Fear of death, fear of having your family tortured in front of your eyes. Both humans and demons were tortured. Many times demons were forced to physically manifest, then they were tortured and torn into pieces by other stronger demons because of some minor disobedience. The sights and sounds of these hideous episodes were burned into the minds of everyone present. The group was then told that this was an example of what would happen to them if they dared to disobey Satan or the demons. During many ceremonies, especially the high ceremonies, in which human sacrifices were performed, demons often took on physical human forms. At times it was difficult to tell who was a demon and who was a human. However, demon eyes are cold and lifeless. Their touch is like burning coals and yet there seems to be no life in them. Torture of loved ones, especially children, is also a favorite tactic to ensure absolute obedience. Parents are forced to stand and watch as their children are beaten to death, brutally sexually molested, or stripped of their skin. If the child survives, the parents cannot take him or her to a hospital because they would be thrown into jail for child abuse. They could never prove they had not done the torture to the child. There would always be other Satanists who would step forward to testify that they had seen the parents abusing the child. The doctors within the cult will not care for them either unless the parents can afford to pay exorbitant sums of money. Another favorite method of discipline is sacrifice. Always there is a time of breathless horror and fear just before each human sacrifice, as every member of the congregation waits and hopes that it would not be them. Many of the sacrifices are people who have been disobedient, or who have tried to pull out of the cult. Werewolves, zombies, vampires and other were-animals do exist. I have seen many of them. This is a very closely guarded secret by Satan. No one controls these beings except Satan or his high-ranking demons. He uses them mostly for discipline. I will never forget one incident during a meeting when Satan sent a werewolf after a man. The man jumped up and ran with a snarling werewolf after him. He could not hope to outrun the animal human. He realized this and turned and pulled a .357 Magnum, firing the contents of the chamber directly into the werewolf. The werewolf never even faltered. He tore the man to shreds. No one in the congregation dared move or make a sound, fearing that the werewolf would be turned on them next. These creatures are human beings possessed by certain types of powerful demons capable of bringing about the necessary physical changes within the human body. Some of the ancient Christian writings from the Dark Ages in Europe document in details about vampires and werewolves. And all ancient cultures are full of mentions of were-animals, half human, half animals. I have never found anything in writing that is accurate about them except in the ancient satanic writings kept in the vaults of the main satanic mansion in the hills of California. The were-animals are greatly feared and hated by everyone within the cult. They are loners, 100% sold out to Satan. I suspect that during the tribulation period they will greatly increase in number and be openly used by Satan for discipline. Another frequent method of discipline is demonically inflicted illness. Also accidents, loss of job, etc. Demonic illnesses usually are a favorite because few doctors can diagnose what is wrong. And the person so afflicted dies a very painful and slow death, while doctors think he is imagining the symptoms. Most of the children born to parents in the cult are dedicated to Satan, much like the baby dedications in the Christian churches. The ceremony involves a baptism of the infant in the blood of a sacrificed animal. These children are demon-possessed from before birth. This goes on for generation after generation unless some parents are willing to let Jesus Christ become the Lord and Master of their life, and let His blood wash away all that sin. The blood of Jesus is so powerful, and His work on the cross so complete, that even the werewolves can be saved if they want to be. Jesus can raise the dead today just as He did when He walked the earth in a human body. These people under Satan's control are dead. I praise God that today I am completely delivered. I belong to Jesus, to Him alone, and there is no way that Satan or any of his people, no matter what they do to me, can stop me from telling what is going on in Satan's kingdom. You, reader, if you are a member of the Brotherhood, you, too can be delivered from this bondage. You don't have to stay in Satan's kingdom of evil and darkness and fear. Jesus can and will set you free. All you need to do is ask Him to wash away your sins with His blood, and become your Lord and Master. Don't wait, time is very short. Jesus is coming back soon. There are not many days left. Make haste while there is yet time. Will you be left behind when Jesus comes and takes home all of His own? Please turn to Him now. Chapter 8. The Black Mass and Human Sacrifice. Elaine talks. Human sacrifice is a subject that few, if any, ex-cult members are willing to talk about because of the legal implications. I am doing so only at the Lord's command. It is a fact and a practice of the Brotherhood. I have spent most of my life in hospitals and operating rooms because of my persistent refusal to bow to Satan in this area. I flatly refuse to participate in human sacrifice. Because of my extremely rapid rise in power, I quickly attained a position in which I could determine what I would and would not do. That is, as far as other humans were concerned. I was more powerful than the other Satanists, so they could not touch me. Satan and his demons could, however. I have been brutally disciplined and tortured by demons on many occasions because of my refusal to obey Satan in this area. I have had cancer 4 times with many surgeries and all the horrors of chemotherapy. The cancer was directly given to me by Satan as punishment for my refusal to participate in human sacrifice. I have no doubt that I would probably have been killed shortly if the Lord had not had mercy on me and saved me out of Satan's captivity when He did. The customs and ceremonies involved in human and animal sacrifice differ somewhat in different areas. Also, in recent years, especially on the West Coast, large numbers of young people are becoming involved in Satanism through rock music, occultic role-playing fantasy games and, of course, by much individual recruitment. These independent groups are usually heavily involved in drugs, are very open, careless and blatant in what they do, and are not directly involved with the Brotherhood. Many of them do not even know the group exists. These are the groups careless enough to get caught in their various crimes of ritualistic child abuse, human sacrifice, etc. At the time I left Satanism, there was a growing concern among the leaders of the Brotherhood about the carelessness of these people. However, Satan is rapidly becoming so bold that he really doesn't care, and he certainly doesn't care how many of these people end up in jail for the crimes they commit. Satan knows he doesn't have many years left, and he is rapidly moving to perpetuate as much destruction upon this earth as possible. In the United States there are 8 holy days out of each year when human sacrifice is performed. Human sacrifices may also be performed on other days for other reasons such as discipline, fertility rites, etc. Smaller covens who do not have the necessary facilities, usually join with the larger covens nearby on these occasions. The holy days are Christmas, Easter, Halloween, Thanksgiving, and as close as possible to the first day of spring, summer, fall and winter. Satan wishes to desecrate each of God's mercifully ordained seasons. Halloween has, since its inception by the Druids in England, been a special holiday for human sacrifices to Satan. It continues the same in our day. The sudden epidemic of harmful substances and objects being placed in the various Halloween treats for trick-or-treaters is no accident. It was a carefully planned effort by Satanists. The children injured and killed by these treats are sacrifices to Satan. The purpose of the sacrifices as taught to cult members, is to purify them so that they can receive Satan's blessings. Also, anyone who drinks the victim's blood or eats their flesh gains new demons and therefore greatly increased power. The drinking of blood is an important part of all satanic activities. This is no accident. Satan constantly strives to defile all of God's principles. Bible passage, "And whatsoever man there be of the house of Israel, or of the strangers that sojourn among you, that eateth any manner of blood, I will even set my face against that soul that eateth blood, and will cut him off from among his people. For the life of the flesh is in the blood." Leviticus 17, 10-11. Human sacrifices, as with all cult meetings, are never held the same place twice. Most members did not find out the location of the meeting until a few hours prior to its start. Sacrifices are always held in the most hidden and isolated areas possible. In large cities this sometimes becomes a problem, but there are usually enough vacant or abandoned warehouses and buildings available. Rarely does the Brotherhood hold a human sacrifice outside except when very secluded and isolated country or swampy areas are available. This is not true with the younger bolder people tripped out on drugs. They are not overly concerned with security, and because of this the Brotherhood sees to it that many of them are discovered by the police and arrested, or are simply exterminated to prevent trouble. They are always declared to be insane. The Brotherhood sees to this so that a serious connection with Satanism is not made. Specific committees are appointed and maintained within the Brotherhood to set up the necessary equipment and to provide cleanup afterwards. Satanists who are also policemen are almost always on these committees. Their function is to prevent any interference from law enforcement agencies. The equipment, such as the altar, in large cities Satan's golden throne, etc., is transported in plain vans. It can be quickly set up and taken down. The bodies are almost always disposed of by cremation. Babies are rather easily ground up, even in a garbage disposal, and are often disposed of in this manner. Occasionally the body is cremated at the site of the sacrifice. When this is not practicable, there usually is no difficulty in using the facilities of a nearby mortuary. Also, crematory facilities at veterinary hospitals or animal shelters are frequently used. The highly disciplined and carefully planned work of both the setup and cleanup committees has been responsible for keeping the practice of human sacrifice out of the public eye for many years. Security at such ceremonies is always tight, and police radio frequencies are continuously monitored throughout the ceremony. Anyone who has witnessed such a ceremony of human sacrifice and then tries to pull out of the cult does so at the cost of his or her own life. The only way to get out is through the power of Jesus Christ, and even then it is not easy. The demons closely monitor everyone who has ever been even slightly involved with such a practice. I will describe here a Black Sabbath, also called the Black Mass, that I was forced to attend. I was, at the time, a minor, not yet a high priestess, and was literally a captive. Black Sabbaths take place once per year. Always at the time of the full moon and on the Easter weekend. Most of the competitions that I attended in California were just before Easter and culminated in the Easter Black Sabbath. Regardless of the cost, I always managed to get away just before the ceremony. Satan saw to it that I paid dearly for that rebellion, but I didn't care. I was very young at the time of that horrible weekend, still a child actually, but the memories of it torment me still and always will. I had been a member of the cult for less than a year. I was informed by the high priestess that a very important ceremony was coming up, that I was privileged to be invited, but she also made it very clear at the same time that I had no choice. I would attend. Only those who are invited attend, and those invited have no choice but to attend. Few are willing to incur Satan's wrath by not attending because they are afraid that if they did so they would be likely to end up the sacrificee at the next Black Mass. I was not permitted to go alone but was taken by my master, the high priestess, and several other witches. The meeting was held in a very large isolated barn which had been roughly remodeled for the purpose. I suppose that there were a couple thousand people there from the whole surrounding area. Most had already been taking drugs prior to coming, and all were given potions to drink containing drugs and alcohol at the beginning of the meeting. I always avoided taking any of these drug drinks because I knew the danger of clouding my mind. There were too many who coveted my position of being trained to be a high priestess. The higher members of the cult that never partook of these drug drinks and despised those who did so. I didn't know what was going to happen as I entered the barn with my companions that night. It was a Friday night, Good Friday. The meeting was to run through that Sunday. I saw that the barn had a platform across one end. Above the platform sat a throne made of pure gold. That throne was for Satan. This was obviously an important occasion if Satan was to put in a personal appearance. I was to learn later that split-second timing of such sacrifices is required by Satan and absolute coordination between covens across the country because Satan can only be in one place at a time. The timing must be accurate so that he could attend every meeting. He is not omnipresent like God. As the high priest and high priestess came out onto the platform, an absolute silence fell over the crowd. A silence so intense that you could hear a pin drop. The silence was one of fear. Each one was afraid that he or she might be chosen to be the sacrifice. At that moment Satan was no longer a glory to anyone, no longer an honor. A ripple of relief went through the crowd when the victim was dragged kicking and screaming through a side door and up onto the stage. The main Easter sacrifice is always a man. Occasionally additional sacrifices of women, children, or animals are made, but the ceremony centers around the sacrifice of a man. Often a hitchhiker is picked up some days before the ceremony and carefully guarded until the time of the meeting. In the eyes of Satan and the crowd, that man becomes Jesus and Satan's supposed victory over Jesus at the cross is celebrated. I watched in utter horror as a crown of huge long thorns was driven into the young man's head. The thorns going in so deep as to pierce into his skull. Then he was stripped and beaten with whips tipped with metal studs, and tortured with spikes and red-hot pokers. Finally he was nailed to a wooden cross which was then picked up and placed in a hole in the ground just in front of the middle of the platform. I will never forget the stench of the burned and tormented flesh, the screams of the victim, his writhing agony, his pleas for mercy. The crowd roared like a pack of wild animals, the inhuman voices of many demons from within the crowd joining in. They jeered and cheered as the cross was raised into place and dropped down into the hole. Satan had appeared by that time and sat on his throne nodding in approval. The high priest urinated on the victim and members of the congregation threw feces at him while everybody cheered Satan's supposed victory and then bowed down and worshipped Satan. Satan appeared in human form as usual, dressed completely in shining white. But his eyes glowed red as a flame and he threw his head back and gave a howl and a scream and a hideous laugh of victory as the high priest drove a long spike through the man's head, pinning it to the cross, killing him. The crowd went crazy, screaming and shouting and dancing in crazed ecstasy at the victory. They loudly proclaimed all victory and power and honor to their father Satan. Satan vanished shortly after that to go on to the next Black Sabbath sacrifice. At his departure the meeting turned into a sex orgy. Human with human, and demon with human. Every type of sexual perversion imaginable was practiced. The victim's blood was drained off and mixed with drugs and alcohol and drank by the high priest and high priestess and passed through the crowd. Many of the crowd went up to desecrate the body. The night hours passed by while the drugged demonic drunken frenzy of the crowd continued. Eventually the body was severed from the head and ground up, and portions mixed with drugs and other substances. Those who wanted more power ate some of the mixture. The third day, as people began to come down from their drugged state, they left for home in twos and threes. All proclaiming that their great and glorious father Satan had won yet another victory over the enemy Jesus Christ. What a mockery the Black Sabbaths are! Satan knows that they are a mockery. The ceremony itself is supposed to be symbolic of the death of Christ. Satan proclaims that Jesus Christ was the ultimate sacrifice to him, that he won over Christ by killing him on the cross. Satan is lying. He knows that he was defeated at the cross, not Jesus, and so do all of the demons. But the people don't. I am one of the fortunate ones. I found out that it is all a lie. It is all an indescribably horrible lie. I declare to you the reader, you who are yet Satanists, you who have not yet made Jesus your Lord and Master, Satan was not victorious at the cross. God's word sums it up the best, and having spoiled principalities and powers, he made a show of them openly, triumphing over them in it, referring to Jesus' death on the cross. Colossians 2:15. Jesus is alive. Satan has no right to any of us. We can be free from bondage to Satan. All we need do is ask Jesus to set us free. He already paid the price. Won't you ask Jesus today? Tomorrow may be too late. Chapter 9. Turning Points. Elaine talks. The first real turning point in my life came about a year after I became the regional bride of Satan. My dream world of believing that I was actually loved by someone, Satan himself, was cruelly shattered. Apparently I had committed some minor offense against Satan, so minor in fact, that I had not even realized that I had done anything. I was home alone one day when suddenly 4 huge demons appeared in a physical manifestation. They were all 4 identical. They were dark, about 7 feet tall and covered with black scales similar to Richon, my guide demon. They had vicious faces, long fangs and even longer fingernails that were like razor-sharp steel. Without any warning they came and attacked me. They clawed me with their long nails, shredding my flesh. They beat me and tossed me back and forth from one to another like a rubber ball. I screamed and cried and begged them to stop hurting me, begged them to tell me why they were doing this, but they never answered a word. They just snarled and laughed hideous laughs. Manchan and Richon, my guardians, simply stood by and made no move either to help me or to make any explanation as to why they were doing this to me. After about a half an hour they left as suddenly as they had come. I was left lying on the floor, exhausted and in agony. My back was torn in shreds, I had huge bruises from head to toe. The furniture was all tossed about and my blood was everywhere. As I lay there sobbing and panting and trying to recover a bit, Satan walked through the closed door. As usual he was in his favorite guise of an extremely handsome young man. He stood looking down at me and then threw back his head and laughed. He continued to laugh as I lay there sobbing, asking him why the demons had so cruelly tormented me. He never gave me any answer except to tell me that I was being disciplined. He went on to add that he thought that the demons had done a rather good job of it. Then, without making any move to help me, he disappeared. I didn't have any answers except one: Satan hated me and was a liar. That knowledge was a wound deeper to my heart than any wound on my body. I was left to clean up myself and the apartment as best I could. By that time, I was a nurse, and I had to use every bit of my nursing skill and knowledge just to survive. I could not go to anyone for help as I could not explain what had happened to me. No one cared enough about me to come and find out what was wrong with me or to help me. When finally my wounds healed there was no scarring. Satan saw to that. He left no evidence that I could possibly use against him in the future. It was then that I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that Satan hated and despised me and did not love me as he said he did. I also realized that the demons, too, were using me for their own ends. It was Manchan and the other demons that had told on me for whatever small thing I had done. Many times I had covered for them about something they had done in order to protect them from Satan's wrath. They had betrayed me. It was then that I decided to get out of the cult if possible, although it was a couple of years before God showed me the way. I felt overwhelmingly trapped. Demons were all around me and within me. At that time I also thought that they could read my mind. I dared hardly think about wanting out and certainly could never speak about it or the demons would know. I do not know where to turn for help. Where in the world could I ever find the power to overcome Satan and his demons, supposing I even survived long enough to try? I had to pretend continually that I was still willing to be within the cult. I knew that ultimately Satan and the demons planned my destruction. If Manchan or any of the other demons found out what I was thinking, it would have meant death, and an agonizing death at that. 2 years after that episode of discipline, a lady I worked with started inviting me to go with her to her church. I continuously refused. I had troubles enough without going with that fanatic. Then Satan came to me again as the handsome young man. He put his arms around me, acted very loving and told me that he, my husband, had been terribly insulted, and that only I could get revenge for him. He knew Esther's, the lady at work, invitations to go with her to her church. He wanted me to go and destroy that church because the people there were daring to proclaim that he, Satan, not only was alive and well but that he was evil and should and could be fought against. I was to go and join the church and then split it and destroy it.